Hey, meteorologist Pete Mangione here. Obviously a very messy day and a windy day here in southern New England. So this storm that's moving through will have several impacts. We'll start with talking about the winds first. And you can see our forecast here. We're forecasting potentially gusts between 45 and 50 for much of the area, between 50 and 65 potentially from the south coast into eastern Massachusetts. What we have going on today, we have something called the low-level jet, which is a fast-moving current of air a few thousand feet above our heads generally. And that low-level jet today has gusts, at least indicated by computer models. It has winds potentially over 80 knots. Now, it doesn't mean we get the 80 knots down to the surface, but potentially if some of the gusty rain kind of grabs onto some of those wind gusts, so some of the momentum can actually mix at least some of those gusts down to the surface. So that's why we are concerned about some of those higher wind gusts, and obviously down trees. And power outages will be a concern, especially into the early to mid-afternoon. Speaking of the early to mid-afternoon, I think this is the time where we're going to see the heaviest of the rainfall. This is around 2 p.m. You could see the downpours continuing off and on, so obviously localized street flooding a concern, especially when you consider that there may still be some snow and ice stuck in some of those drains. And also, yesterday a lot of that ground just frozen solid, so it's going to be a little bit harder for the water to get absorbed into the soil, so there may be a bit more runoff than you would normally see from this amount of rain. But we could get several inches of rain, and it remains rather wet with periods of heavy rain all the way through the middle, maybe to the later part of the afternoon. If you're worried about the evening commute, I would say, yeah, the first part of the evening commute could have some localized street flooding and ponding. It does appear it gets a little improved by maybe 6 or 7 p.m., so perhaps the tail end of the commute a little bit better than the first part of the evening commute, but definitely plan on things a little bit slow out there. One more thing I did want to mention, obviously the silver lining with all of this today would be the mild temperatures. We've already seen a lot of those temperatures in the 50s, temperatures in the upper 50s, maybe even a few low 60s, not completely out of the question today, but it's back to reality tonight. You can see 9, 10 p.m. back into the 30s and then 20s for overnight low temperatures. So when we add everything up, the storm impacts, just so you can see what we're talking about here. Flooding, yes, a high impact from some of that potential street flooding. Travel will certainly be affected during the afternoon. Wind threat, the impacts could be high there because of some of those down trees and potential power outages. And fortunately with this storm, we do not have any threat from ice or snow. So we do have that going for us. Please stay tuned throughout the day. We'll have more updates. Tony will be in looking at more data and have the forecast for the rest of the week and the weekend.